In the point of the sources of Indian history, we completed archaeological sources. In this video, we are going to discuss literary sources, how they used for the reconstruction of Indian history. In the regarding literary sources means written evidences. Earlier we discussed monuments, material evidences. Archaeological sources are the material evidences. Literary sources are written evidences. How these written evidences are used? So literary sources can be divided into two parts, like indigenous means Indian literary sources. These are the foreign literary sources. Indigenous literary sources, foreign literary sources. Two types. Indigenous literary sources, again we can divide into two parts, religious and also secular. Religious and secular. First we will discuss indigenous sources, how they used to reconstruct the Indian history. In the indigenous literary sources, indigenous, especially religious, coming to the point of the religious, initially for any history we will find religious sources for the reconstruction. Wherever you go, all the works, literary works, starts with the religion. Whatever the story, whatever the history you take, European history or Indian history or American history, whatever the history you take, that history, literary works starts with religion. ఎక్కడైనా సరే మతంతో మొదలవుతుంది రాత పుస్తకాలు అనేవి. In India, literary sources, religious literary sources, first coming to the point of Brahmanical literary sources. Brahmanical literary sources. Brahmanical literary sources are also called as Vedic literature. They start with Vedic literature related to the Vedas. Brahmanical literary sources, completely religion, they represent the religion. These Brahmanical religious sources will start with the Vedic period. Vedic period. Especially Rigvedic period. From the time of the Rigvedic period. That is from 1500 BC. Rigvedic period 1500 BC. First literary evidence in India, Rigveda. It was the first literary sources to know about the India. Rigveda speaks about social conditions of that period, economical conditions of that period, and religious conditions of that period. Socio-economical religious conditions we can understand by the reading of Rigveda. How people they lived in the society, how their economic system, what are the religious practices they follow, all these things were can be found in Rigveda. After the Rigveda, next to Yajurveda, Samaveda, Atharvaveda. Yajurveda, Samaveda, Atharvaveda. These literary works, they speak Yajurveda, it speaks about the yagnas and yagas. Samaveda, it speaks about the rhythmic styles of the Rigvedic rims. Atharvaveda, it speaks about the magical spells, magic mantras and tantrics, how they used. So like this, they throw some the light of the social conditions, religious conditions of all these things. Along with this, Brahmanical literary sources along the Vedas, we can also find Puranas, epics, So first Vedas, next Vedangas. Vedangas are used to understand the Vedas. Vedangas are six Vedangas are used to the understanding of the Vedas. Saddarsanas. Saddarsanas are used to the Saddarsanas speaks about the philosophy. Buddhism, Jainism existed through the Saddarsanas. Buddhism and Jainism. And Saddarsanas, they originated from the Upanishads. Here we can know Vedas and Upanishads are the contradictory. Veda speaks about Vedic yajnas and yagas. Upanishads they speaks about philosophy. They did not accept the Vedic performances. That we are knowing. Like that we reconstruct the Vedic case and Upanishadic case. Vedas are used to the reconstruction of the Indian history by knowing the social systems and Vedic performances. And Upanishads are going to give the knowledge. Knowledge is the main purpose of the knowing of Upanishads. Next, Puranas. Puranas are 18 from Brahma Purana to Brahmanda Purana. Brahma Purana is the first Purana and Brahmanda Purana is last Purana, 18th Purana. Brahma Purana to Brahmanda Purana, there were 18 Puranas. Puranas gives, they speaks about genealogy of the gods, genealogy of the kings. They speaks about the genealogy of the gods, genealogy of the kings and etc. Puranas. For example, some Puranas, if you take the information of the Puranas, Vishnu Purana speaks about Mauryan philosophical system, Mauryan administrative system and Mauryans. Vishnu Purana throws light on the Mauryans. Matsya Purana throws light on the Satavahanas. And Vayu Purana, it speaks about the Guptas. Puranas, they give the information from early, after the, 6th century, almost 6th century BC to the 6th century AD. This period Puranas were composed. They speaks about the period between the 6th century BC. అంటే 6వ శతాబ్దం కన్నా ముందున్నటువంటి కాలాన్ని మొత్తం ఆ యుగంలో ఏమేం జరిగిందో మనకి ఇక్కడ తెలుస్తుంది. Complete Matsya Purana gives the Satavahana, all the rulers of the Satavahanas. Puranas, they said about the Satavahanas are the Andhabrutyas. And according to the Puranas, Mauryans were belongs to Sudra clan, that is lower origin. Like this, Puranas, they throw light on the Indian history to reconstruct the Indian history. Along these Puranas, epics. There are 2 epics in India. In the Sanskrit literature, there are 2 epics. Mahabharata and Ramayana. Mahabharata and Ramayana. There are 2 epics. Mahabharata was written by Vedavyas and Ramayana was written by Valmiki in Sanskrit. What is the importance of the epics? The main importance of the epics to achieve 4 goals of humankind. 4 goals of man. These 4 goals are dharma, artha, kama, moksha. So we are knowing these 4 goals. And Mahabharata, it speaks about the contemporary period political system, economical system, social system, cultural system, religious system, everything. For example, while Dharmaja, he was defeated in the hands of the Duryodhana while they are playing a gambling. Dharmaja, he completely gave his kingdom to the Duryodhana. By that time, people asked to the Dharmas, how can you give the complete territories? There is a clear-cut explanation in the Mahabharata. The complete land which was under the control of the king was the owner of the land. King was the owner of the land, which is the complete under the control of the land. So that was the thing we are knowing from the Mahabharata, Ramayana, all these things. These are used to reconstruct the Indian history. And based on the Mahabharata, Ramayana, we also found different books like Gupta's period. Mahakavi Kalidas, he wrote Abhignana Sakuntala, has taken from the Mahabharata. And also he wrote Vikramaswarayam, has been taken from the Mahabharata. And also he wrote Meghadutam, has been taken from the Mahabharata. Almost all the books which were written in latter period poets, they took a concept from the epics or Vedas or from the Puranas. So like this, Brahmanical literary sources used to reconstruct the Indian history. Coming to the point of the Buddhist literary source, sacred books of Buddhism. Sacred books of Buddhism. 3 Pitakas. Sutta Pitaka, Vinaya Pitaka, Abhidhamma Pitaka. Sutta Pitaka speaks about teachings of Buddha, compiled on the name of the teachings of Buddha. Vinaya Pitaka orders what to follow in society, what to follow, what not to follow. And Dhamma Pitaka, Abhidhamma Pitaka, it speaks about the Dhamma of Buddhism. Like this, doctrines of Buddha compiled in the Abhidhamma Pitaka. These are used for the reconstruction of the Indian history. And not only teachings of Buddha, while if you going through the teachings of Buddha, you can find the contemporary issues. Rulers, those who follow the Buddhism, and common people how common people followed the Buddhism, how Buddha became very popular, all these things we can know from this Twalangas. Another book, Bible of Buddhism, Milinda Panho. Milinda Panho, it was Bible of Buddhism. Was composed by Nagasena. Milinda Panho is the questions of Milinda, Indo-Greek ruler. Indo-Greek ruler Milinda, he asked questions to the Nagasena, composed as a book, Milinda Panho. It was a mirror of first centuries of Christian era. We can find the complete information of the first century of Christian era by following this book. ఈ బుక్ లో అసలు ఇది క్రీస్తకం 1వ శతాబ్దం 2వ శతాబ్దానికి సంబంధించినటువంటి భారతదేశ చరిత్రను అలా అద్దంలో చూపించింది ఈ పుస్తకం. మిర్రర్ ఆఫ్ దట్ కాంటెంపరరీ సొసైటీ ఆఫ్ ఇండియా. నెక్స్ట్, ఆఫ్టర్ ది బుద్ధిజం, జైన్ సోర్సెస్, జైన్ లిటరీ సోర్సెస్, Twalangas, sacred books of Jainism, Twalangas. These Twalangas speaks about the Jaina doctrines of Jainism. Next to Uttaradhyayana Sutra. Uttaradhyayana Sutra. This book was a old part of Jainism, Uttarayana Sutra. Next to Niti Vakyamruta. Niti Vakyamruta. This was another Jain book written by Somadeva Suri. So these books throws light on the Indian history. These are the religious books. And the Islamic literature also existed in the latter period. Islamic literature also speaks about Sufi saints and all the Islamic activities. Next, after this, secular books. There were different types of the secular books. Secular books are like grammar books. Secular books are the grammar books. Political books, grammar books, political books, historical books, grammar books, political books, historical books, biographies, etc. These were the related to all these books related to the secular books. Secular books means nowhere related to the religion. They were not related to the religion. First secular books, we can come into that point, Ashtadhyayi. Panini's Ashtadhyayi. Ashtadhyayi was written by Panini. This book speaks about Sanskrit grammar. First Sanskrit grammar book in the Indian history, Ashtadhyayi, that means 8 chapters. Adhyaya means 8 chapters. Panini's disciple, Panini's student, Patanjali wrote Mahabhashya. Mahabhashya was written by Patanjali. So these two books are the earliest grammar books, Sanskrit grammar books in India. Panini and Patanjali, early grammarians in India. Along with this, Sarvavarma, during the time of the Satavahana's period, Sarvavarma wrote Katantra Vyakarana. It was a commentary on Katantra Vyakarana, was a commentary on the Sanskrit grammar. Same Mahabhashya, also commentary on the Ashtadhyayi. It was a commentary on the Sanskrit grammar. Based on this book, we can easily learn the Sanskrit. He wrote this book for the cause of the Kuntala Satakarni to learn the Sanskrit. After this, Amara Kosam was written by Amara Simha. Amara Kosam was written by Amara Simha. It was first Sanskrit dictionary. It was the first Sanskrit dictionary in Indian literature. This is grammar books related to the Indian history. Coming to the point of the political books. Political history. The first book which speaks about the political history of India, that was Kautilya's Arthashastra. Kautilya's Arthashastra. So from the Kautilya's Arthashastra, we can know the political conditions of the Mauryans, economical conditions of the Mauryans. So we reconstructed Indian history, Mauryan Indian history based on the Kautilya's Arthashastra. Like Kalhana's Rajatarangini. Kalhana wrote Rajatarangini. Kalhana's Rajatarangini, it speaks about Kashmir rulers. It speaks about the Kashmir rulers. Kalhana's Rajatarangini was the first Indian book which followed chronological order. That's why Kalhana is called as the father of Indian history. Who was the father of world history? Herodotus wrote histories, first history book. In the Indian history, Kalhana was the first person who wrote Indian history on the chronological order. Before the Kalhana, even if you go to the Puranas or if you go to the Mahabharata, Puranas, they speaks about much rulers of India, like Vayu Purana, Vishnu Purana, Matsya Purana. All this speaks about much rulers of India, but they did not give correct chronological order of the rulers. They gave the rulers, that's all. They did not give in the chronology. That means Indian writers, they did not concentrate on the chronology in the earlier period. The first ruler, first poet who concentrated was the Kalhana, it was the Rajatarangini. Along these biographies, There were so many biographies were written in India, like Harsha Charitra. Harsha Charita. It was a biography which was written by Bana. Bana wrote Harsha Charita. Bilhana wrote Vikramanka Deva Charitra. Vikramanka Deva Charitra. It was written by Bilhana. Bilhana wrote Vikramanka Deva Charitra. Kalhana wrote Bana wrote Harsha Charitra. Bana's Harsha Charitra speaks about the complete information of Harshavardhana. Vikramanka Deva Charitra speaks about the Vikramaditya 6 of the Chalukya ruler. Next, along with this, Hemachandra wrote Kumarapala Charitra. Hemachandra, he wrote Kumarapala Charitra. Hemachandra wrote Kumarapala Charitra. Padmagupta wrote Navasasanka Charitra. Navasasanka Charitra. All these are the biographies. Chand Bardai wrote Prithviraj Raso. Chand Bardai, he wrote Prithviraj Raso. Next, Vakpati wrote Gaudavaho. Vakpati, he wrote Gaudavaho. It speaks about Yasovarman, the ruler of Kannauj. All these are the biographies. Biographies are very important to know about the rulers. After the biographies in the secular books, next to Sanskrit dramas were also, we can find some Sanskrit dramas. Kalidas wrote three Sanskrit dramas, Vikramaswariyam, Abhijnana Sakuntalam, and also Megha Sandesi. Malavikagnimitra. Kalidas, Abhijnana Sakuntala, Vikramaswariyam, Kalidas, Abhijnana Sakuntala, Vikramaswariyam, Malavikagnimitra. These three were dramas. Kalidas is very famous to write the Sanskrit dramas. That's why Kalidas is called as Indian Shakespeare. Indian Shakespeare. So Kalidas books, they throw light on the social conditions of the period. For example, if you come to the point of the Malavikagnimitra, in the Malavikagnimitra, Kalidas, he explained about the temple, Mahankali temple of Ujjaini. In that Ujjaini Mahankali temple, he mentioned that Ujjaini Mahankali temple became center for the Devadasi system. Devadasi system is caused for the next to prostitution. That means prostitution started in the Devadasi system. First time explained in the Malavikagnimitra. Like that. Next to scientific books. Scientific books, they started during the time of the Gupta's period. Especially Gupta's period. Like Aryabhatta. Aryabhatta, he wrote Aryabhattiyam and Surya Siddhantika. Aryabhattiyam, Surya Siddhantika. Brahmagupta wrote Brahma Siddhantam. Brahmagupta, he wrote Brahma Siddhantam. Along with these two, another person, Varahamihira, he wrote Bruhas Samhita. Charaka wrote Charaka Samhita. Palakapya wrote Hastayurveda. Palakapya, he wrote Hastyayurveda. This is medical science book. All these are the books of astronomy and astrology. They speaks about the astronomy and astrology. After knowing all these books, like Acharya Nagarjuna also wrote Loha Shastra. Based on the Loha Shastra of Acharya Nagarjuna, during the time of the Chandragupta II period, they constructed a Mehroli pillar inscription at Delhi. Mehroli. That Mehroli pillar inscription till today not yet rusted. Like this, secular books are used to reconstruct the Indian history. After this, indigenous sources, coming to the point of the foreign literary sources. Some foreign literary sources also gives the information of India. Foreign accounts, based on the foreign accounts, we can reconstruct Indian history. Herodotus, first foreigner, Herodotus, he wrote histories. In those histories book, he mentioned about Alexander invasion on India, while he was writing about the Peloponnese Wars. Peloponnese Wars, while he was mentioned about the Peloponnese Wars, wars between the Greeks and Persians. By that period, Alexander, he mentioned about the Herodotus mentioned about the Alexander invasion occurred on India during the time of 326 BC. That is you can remember this as 326 BC. Next, after this, Megasthenes, he wrote Indica. Megasthenes Indica speaks about municipal administration of the Patliputra and also Indian social system. Megasthenes, he divided Indian society into 7 classes, but most of the 7 classes he divided based on the economic system, not based on the social tradition. And he also said that no slavery in India. All these things we are knowing from the Indica book. Indica book, originally it was not available. Original book of Indica is not available. Some quotations of Indica were mentioned by the different books, like Pliny the Elder. Pliny the Elder. Pliny the Elder, he wrote the natural history. The natural history. Pliny the Elder, he wrote the natural history. Ptolemy wrote geography. Ptolemy, he wrote geography. Periplus of the Erythraean Sea, an unknown writer wrote Periplus of the Erythraean Sea. Periplus of Erythraean Sea was written by an unknown writer. Next, Strabo, another writer, wrote a book on the geography. Aryan, he also wrote about the Mauryans. All these books, they speaks about post-Mauryan period, trade between India and foreign countries. How India continued trade with foreign countries, we can know from these books. For example, Pliny the Elder, he wrote about the Rome trade with India. He said about black pepper. The importance of the black pepper and valuable item which is available in India. Greeks, they gave equal weight of the gold to purchase the black pepper. That's why Pliny the Elder, he said the drain of gold from Rome to India. Black pepper ante India lo black pepper మిరియాలు ఎంత వెయిట్ అయితే ఇస్తామో అంతే వెయిట్ వాళ్ళు గోల్డ్ ఇచ్చేవారు. ఆ విధంగా గోల్డ్ ఇండియాకు తరలి వచ్చిందని చెప్పేసి నేను ఏడ్చాడు. ప్లీనీ ద ఎల్డర్, he said about the drain of wealth from Rome to India. And also these were mentioned Indian trade centers and Indian seaports of that period. Indian seaports like Broch, Sopara, Kalyani in the western side, Arikamedu, Arikamedu, Mysolia, Tamralipti in the eastern side, like that they mentioned Indian trade centers. Along with this, another writers like Chinese writers. Chinese pilgrims, 4 Chinese pilgrims, they came to India and they gave accounts about India. Among them, Fahian, he came to India in 400 to 410. He was there in India. He wrote to Fukoki. The records of Western Kingdom, Fukoki, was written by the Fahian. It speaks about the Indian system of Gupta's period. After the Fahian, Huyasan, he was there in India from 630 to 646, this period. He wrote Siyuki. It was records of the Buddhist kingdom. It speaks about the Harshavardhana period. Fahian came to India during the time of the Chandragupta II period. That book speaks about the Gupta's period. Huyasan came to India during the Harshavardhana period. That book speaks about the Harshavardhana, and also it gave valuable information about Nalanda University. Valuable information about the Nalanda University. After this, Huyansang, Wang Huyansti, he also came to India in 650. After the Wang Huyansti, next is Qing. He came to India in 678 AD during the time of the Yasovarman period. Like these 4 Chinese travelers, they speak about India. They give different information about India, accounts of India. Along with this, Muslim writers like Al-Biruni, Muslim writers, Al-Biruni. Al-Biruni, he came to India along with Muhammad Ghazani. He wrote Taqiq-i-Hind. Al-Biruni's Taqiq-i-Hind book, it was middle of the 11th century AD. The complete 11th century AD social, economical, political system, religious system, we can know by reading this book, Taqiq-i-Hind. After that, some European writers came to India. Portuguese writers, they came to India. They speak about Indian history. So like this, foreign writers, different foreign writers, they came to India. They gave information about the Indian tradition, Indian system. Like for example, Fahian. According to the Fahian, all the villages, they won't lock their houses. And most of the Indians are non-vegetarians. He said that Indian villages evaru indiki talupulu veyarani. Villages lo indiki talupulu undavani cheppadu. Ante India gurinchi anta great ga cheppadu. Foreigners, they said about India very great. Huyansang, he also gave information about the Nalanda University. So like this, foreigners, they came to India and they gave information about Indian history. So these literary sources are used to reconstruct the Indian history. By this ended sources of Indian history. In the next class, we will start prehistoric age. Okay, good luck to you.